Welcome to our session for Family King Kickoff 2020. My name is Ali Rodriguez, and I'm the Executive Director at the Toppel Career Center. Our mission is to prepare students to make educated decisions as they explore the ever-changing landscape of careers. We achieve this through innovation and strategic connections with the university community and beyond. We so appreciate you taking the time to join us. Our goal today is to help educate you on how you can be an advocate for your student while they are at the U. We have 3 outstanding panelists today, and each will provide unique insight into career education and how employers recruit our students for jobs and internships. First, I'd like to turn it over to Christian Garcia of the Toppel Career Center to introduce himself.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. Again, thank you for being part of our presentation today. My name is Christian Garcia. I'm the Associate Dean and Executive Director of the Toppel Career Center. I've been with the center and the university for over 19 years, and though I'm not a Cane officially, I do consider myself a hurricane because I've been here so long, and I absolutely love it.
Next, Dave Ong of Maximus, which provides business process services to government health and human services agencies in the US, Australia, Canada, Saudi Arabia, and the UK.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for allowing me to attend this discussion. And I have to tell you, as somebody that doesn't have kids of my own, I do have enormous admiration for those of you that have got your kids into the University of Miami, such a prestigious university to begin with. And let me also tell you that in the 25 years or so that I've been doing college recruiting, let me just tell you that your kids are in great hands with the folks at the Toppel Career Center. Because this really is, I think, one of the premier career center organizations in the country. And trust me, they're not paying me anything to say that.
And Dave, you may not have kids, but I know you have godchildren. So you have yours.
That's right.
So lastly, I'd like to introduce Tiffany Taylor of Handshake. This platform was created to ensure that all college students have equal access to meaningful careers.
Hello, everyone. Tiffany Taylor, and I work on our university success team at Handshake, which means that I get to work really closely, as David said, with one of the most incredible career centers in our country. And like David, I also don't have kids, but I can tell you that I worked for 15 or so years in higher education. So about 10,000 kids is what I like to say that I had. But yes, working with your career center and getting your kids connected to really all the offices that are provided at your university is exponentially just an extension of the great parenting that you have been doing, the guardianship that you have been providing. And that's what your Toppel Career Center wants to do for your incredible students.
Thank you all. And we have some great topics we're going to cover today. And let's start with the elephant in the room, COVID-19. So in light of the impact of this pandemic on the economy and jobs, should families be worried about their child's career? What can students and their families do to be proactive? And Christian, why don't you start us off on this question?
Thank you, Ali. Well, I'm glad that we're getting this topic out of the way right off the bat. I think that worried is probably the wrong word. We try to be as positive as possible. Life will present us challenges, and these things are cyclical. 10 years ago, we had the Great Recession. Before that, in 2001, we had 9/11. All of these different things affect the workplace, they affect the economy, and this is no different. And while, I'm not going to sit here and say things are great and that there aren't challenges ahead for us and for your students, and maybe even for you in your career, they're not insurmountable. So one of the things that we tell our students is to stay informed and to be aware of what the hiring is for their particular industry. And even if it seems bleak, that there are a lot of other options available. So what do I recommend? How can you help your student? How can students be proactive? Well, start by doing something. And what I mean by that is, our former director at the Career Center used to always say that, the Career Center is like a gym. You can join a gym and you could pay your membership, but if you don't go, you're not going to reap the benefits. You're not going to be fit. You're not going to be healthy. And really a career center is no different, except there is no membership fee. It's part of your tuition. I would love to tell you that we are going to wake your student up and say, hey, it's time to come to the Career Center. That's not going to happen. So really, it's about doing something, taking that initial step, whether it is dropping into one of our Zoom drop-in advising, just to ask basic questions about resumes, cover letters. Maybe your son or daughter doesn't know what they want to major in. guess what? We can help with that. Also, maybe students don't want to work right out the bat, straight out the bat when it comes to life after college. Maybe they want to explore graduate or professional schools. You may be thinking it's still early for that, but you'd be surprised how quickly this goes, especially if you're a transfer student. So we can help with that process of what does it mean to get into graduate school? What are the tests I need to take? How do I craft a winning and impactful personal statement? We help with all of these things. So really, it's a matter of doing something, starting that process. Now, do you want to do, jam-pack, career-related things into the first semester? Probably not. The first semester is meant for you to kind of get your bearings, get acclimated, make friends, learn new study skills, but really start thinking about, what it is that you want to do with your life after college. Because not to scare you that, yeah, it'll be here quickly, but it will be here quickly, trust me. So again, to bring it back to COVID, I think it's about knowing that there is a long-term, this is a long-term process in terms of career, and we don't know where we're going to be in 2 years, 3 years, 4 years when it comes to the economy. But it's about staying active, not letting all the messages that you see online and in the media, again, staying informed, but also remembering not to overdo it and really focusing. So I want to turn it over to one of my colleagues to find out, get their perspective from the employer side. So I'll let Dave answer a part of this question.
Sure, and we'll add to what Christian was saying before, is that I don't want this to turn into a panic session and that there won't be any jobs and there won't be any internships. I do think that if I was a parent of a college student entering their freshman year this year, I'd be making sure that my kid was really very diligent in terms of checking into that career center. To me, it all comes down to early engagement.
Yeah.
As an employer, it's usually pretty easy to see the student that's interviewing for an internship in their junior year, or maybe even for a full-time position in their senior year. It's not that tough to figure out who's never engaged with a career center and who's doing the preparation last minute. The fact that you're paying a significant amount of money to send your kids to college, remember that they're not paying extra to go to a career center. That's one of those things that drives me crazy, is when I talk to students in their junior year or the beginning of their senior year that haven't really started the career exploration journey. And it is a journey. It's not something that's going to happen in a 6 month period or 9 month period of time. It's really something that should take place ideally over a 3 or 4 year period. So if you've got some concerns, I would start thinking about how often do you check in with your child about, have they registered with the career center? Have they created a handshake account? Do they have a LinkedIn profile? Simple things that will get them at least thinking about those initial steps they need to take toward the career exploration piece, and holding them accountable for their actions, or in certain cases, their inactions.
Tiffany, your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. David, thank you for hammering in what I feel like I have said so many times about how employers know. They always know if you've prepared or not. And so I really appreciate you highlighting that. And Christian, now all of us are wondering when next we need to go to the gym. So, great analogy, but that's what's happening. You took the words right out of my mouth, both of you. I always share, word is not where I want us to lean into, but as David said, diligence, being aware, as Christian said, staying informed. And the last one I think is being flexible. Is it the same thriving bed of jobs that we saw maybe even a year ago? Maybe not. But what I will tell you is that it's not a desert, as we might have thought, especially when the pandemic first began. In fact, jobs are being posted constantly on Handshake. Early summer, and I know the Toppel Career Center highlighted this, we even posted our 500 employers hiring right now dashboard that many of your students and your Career Center team went to and highlighted for you. And so, and that's still being updated every 2 weeks. And a part of that came from our desire to reduce that fear and anxiety or worry, as the question posited it. So when it comes to being proactive, it's about looking everywhere, not just in one location. So as much as, of course, I love Handshake, but I know the Toppel Career Center is sending out oodles of information for you to access and for your student to access. Being open and flexible, I think you'll hear me talk a little bit later, and I know David can second this. Looking not just at title, but at task when you're exploring jobs. Many jobs have changed over the years, and job titles get a little bit more creative, but looking at the task, what is in the task of that job? So when I talk about being flexible, it's about being open to what could be out there, especially given COVID and some of the restrictions or developments or innovations. Utilize technology to explore companies you have never heard about. Companies have created new positions in the time of the pandemic. And so I don't mean to make light of the pandemic that we're in. I'm asking you to lean into the innovation and the creativity that this time has brought to us. We're now connected to you virtually right now in a session, right? In a way that I might not have been able to speak to you all before, although I would love to visit you all in Florida. Consider remote work where you might not have before. Again, leaning into what I had mentioned, flexibility. If I go back to when I was in college, I never thought I could have worked remotely. Now I think it's all I might be looking for, and they're sprouting up more and more companies who might not have thought about remote for certain positions before are expanding in that way. So definitely just be more flexible during this time, certainly not worried. And I loved David's point about diligence and Christian about staying aware and up to date.
Absolutely. And I know, Christian, you had mentioned about that first year, easing into things, and that you may, as a student, not be able to do every single thing that you wanted to do on your checklist. So if we can start off with you, is that first year too soon to start gaining an experience? Is first year too early to have an internship? And then what should students consider in terms of experiences at the U?
Listen, I don't think that there are any hard and fast rules, right? Because the minute I throw out a rule, someone's going to break it, because, you know, we know that we select some amazing students to come to the University of Miami. And so I'm sure that some of your children may, or your kids may have already completed an internship in high school. The reason why we tell students typically to avoid doing an internship their first semester entering the University of Miami is more because we want students to focus on getting their bearings. You're moving to a new city, perhaps, even if you're from the Miami area, it's just a whole new ball game. You want to make sure you are sticking to the university, that you're belonging. And you do that by making friends, by getting to know your professors, establishing relationships with your academic advisor, you know, looking to really find where you belong at this institution. And while an internship is a great experience, there's plenty of time to do that. Now, to Dave's point, you don't want to wait until your junior year. If you think about internships kind of like building blocks, that will help you kind of understand how to craft your plan for internships. You know, it used to be back in the day when I was much younger that having one internship was pretty impressive. Like, wow, they did an internship. Now it's kind of like, meh, okay, great. It's better than nothing. However, I think students really need to think about kind of creating a lot of different pieces to their experience portfolio, if you will. And part of that is having multiple internships. First for experience, but also to test drive. You wouldn't buy a car without getting behind the wheel of it and taking it for a spin, right? Maybe some people would, but I certainly wouldn't. And part of that is with the job search. There are so many jobs that may have existed for many years, but even those jobs have changed in nature because of technology, because of reduction in the workforce. So now where there may have been a task for 10 people, now one person is doing 5 of those tasks. So you have to be kind of a jack of all trades. So really thinking about looking at maybe second semester or that first summer after your freshman year as your first internship, and then building on that for the next summer, and then the following summer being that kind of big internship, where Dave will tell you many companies are using that as a funnel into that full-time that full-time class that gets hired, you know, to enter that company. So internships, probably not the first semester, but certainly there are no limits to when and how many really that you want to take. But also remember that internships aren't the end all be all. There are many things that make a candidate very strong. You want to get involved on campus, whether it's, a social organization, but also a professional organization. We have a professional organization for just about every discipline, whether it's Society for Women Engineers, whether it's, engineers have a million clubs just within that school. But the business school has many arts and sciences. So there are a lot of ways to, get your feet wet with a particular industry, but also to make friends. So those are some of the ways to get involved early on. You may not, as I mentioned, you may not know what your major is yet, and that's okay. We love undeclared students because it gives us a place to kind of really explore. And one of the ways that you can explore is by taking an assessment test. We offer a variety of them that you can access now online. And we could work through your results. It's not going to tell you be this one thing, but it may open up your eyes to a variety of things. And for those of you who have children who think, oh, they know exactly what they want to do, I always say, listen, it can't hurt to take an assessment anyway. It may actually just solidify the fact that, that they're on the right track. So those are just some of my pieces of advice when it comes to new students.
And Christian, I can build on that a little bit. You made the reference to building. And I want to kind of take that a little bit further, this concept of what I think of as building blocks when it comes to finding your career ultimately. And that I always talk to a lot of my friends with kids, a lot of my relatives that are concerned that their kid doesn't have an internship in their first year of college or their second year of college sometimes. And I keep telling them that they need to relax and chill a little bit because yes, it could be helpful to have an internship freshman year or sophomore year at some point or after that summer. But I said at the end of the day, experience is experience. It doesn't all have to come from a professional internship where you're sitting in a job. I think about my own personal journey when I was going through college. Every summer that I was in college, I worked in a retail store. And people are asking me, well, did that put you behind the 8 ball in the job search? When I talk to people now that think, okay, how did you not have an internship? I said, well, A, they hardly existed 30 plus years ago. But B, I was learning transferable skills that I would argue, I don't know that I would have gotten those same experiences by working in an office. When I think about my challenges working with tough customers, say, for example, customer service is one of those skills that quite frankly is difficult to find in any internship in this day and age because customer service is a skill that seems to be going by the wayside when it comes to professional jobs and internships. I don't know where I would have developed that skill otherwise. I look at the idea that if you're going to go and work for a bank, say, for example, this is another good example as to why students need to engage early. I get concerned when I talk to students that think they've got a couple of years to get ready for the job search to go into the banking market. But what I have to keep telling them, and I'm sure Christian and Tiffany have seen this as well as Ali over the last couple of years, the banks have moved to a very different schedule in recent years than what would have existed 2 or 3 years ago, much less 10 or 15 years ago. And that several of the large big market banks moved to interviewing their interns in the fall semester of sophomore year, a full year and a half earlier than the job is actually supposed to start, which means you're essentially making a career decision knowing full well that if you do well after the summer of your junior year, you're going to get a full-time job offer to join the bank. But you literally have students that have to be prepared, in my opinion, about 2 or 2.5 years ahead of when they're actually going to start a full-time job. So how do you prep those students to get ready for that type of job search? Because clearly those banks aren't expecting, in my opinion, an intern candidate to have previous internship experience at that point. So I get asked, how do you get those students ready? And I tell them the same thing. I said, you're not going to find them a banking internship in their freshman year in all likelihood. Unless you have amazing connections, that's probably not going to happen. But think about the core skills that those banks are going to be looking for from their interns. And the first thing I always toss out to them is that there's not a single bank out there that's not going to put all of their first-year interns and first-year hires through some type of accounting boot camp. So I said, regardless of what you're going to major in college, see if you can find a summer job doing bookkeeping, where you're working on a general ledger. You understand the debits and the credits. You understand the technicalities in accounting. These are things, actual hard skills that will actually go a long way in the actual job search in that particular field. So don't think you have to get them the whole enchilada of an internship in that first year or that second year to set them up for future success. Instead, think about the type of work experiences, or as Christian mentioned before, this idea that there are extracurricular experiences or academic experiences that can put a lot of tools in their toolbox as well.
What David just
more
mentioned
thing?
is,
Oh,
sorry, go Christian.
No, I just wanted to add, because one of the things that really stands out to me, you may be wondering, some of you may think, how can my son or daughter do an internship when they have to work and they have to make a certain amount of money? I think back to when I was a college student, you know, my parents couldn't afford to pay for all my expenses. And so it was, you know, I had to find the job that was going to pay for the expenses that, you know, are part of being a college student. And I remember walking into the student activities office, not knowing a soul, and saying, I need a campus job, you know, because, and they hired me on the spot, and I ended up working there for 3 years. And to Dave's point, you know, it wasn't an internship, but I learned more in those 3 years. The amount of work and trust that they put in me to do some things that maybe they shouldn't have had me do, but they really trusted me to represent them. And they held me accountable when I didn't, you know, do what I said I was going to do. They taught me those lessons, because college is the time to make the mistakes, not when you're in the real world, or, you know, avoid some of the basic mistakes. So yeah, so I think that, don't forget that it's not just about the internships. There are so many campus jobs that will provide students such valuable experience. Toppel, we hire a lot of students, so I'm just putting that out there. But yeah, so, you know, there are so many things, you know, a lot of times students won't even list that they work at Banana Republic, or that they were a server at a restaurant. Sometimes they don't put that on their resume. I'm like, what are you talking about? I could never have worked at a restaurant because I'm too clumsy and I couldn't handle all of that. But imagine, not just the clumsiness, but dealing with difficult customers, and you're dealing with a register, you're dealing with stress, you're dealing with inventory. So those are all things that really build, you know, a person's career.
That
Tiffany,
always drives me crazy. Thank you for mentioning that, Christian. When I talk to a candidate that doesn't think that they're qualified to apply for an internship or full-time position because they were just a server or just a retail person, and I kind of want to just pull them over by the ear and say, you need to really rethink that, right? Yeah. Because you are gaining valuable skills and experiences that a lot of people that are taking on these full-blown internships may not otherwise get.
It's definitely the experience. And I know, Tiffany, you have thoughts on this as well.
Yeah, the thread I was going to pull out from what David mentioned, in case folks are, you know, maybe they're hearing, oh, he's referring to one industry. I wanted to surface that Handshake pulled that very same data, David, as you can imagine, that companies are starting to brand even earlier to their students, because they're competing, right? If you put your head in that space, right, that if there are this many retail companies, this many accounting firms, well, it's who can get to you first, right? And we know we make decisions, your students make decisions on how a company is making them feel. And so that early branding is critical. So what David is mentioning there is translated across many industries. And so we have employers asking Handshake, hey, how can we reach that first year student? How can we reach that sophomore student? And so when Christian is talking about still dedicating your first year, maybe not diving into an internship, there are features in Handshake that you can use to leverage. Go follow that company, right? Just like you could on all your other social media, have your student follow a company that is of interest to them, that they want to learn more about. That's how you're going to learn what David is talking about, what matters to that company, what they're looking for. Like, you would realize that they want to find out, do you have ability managing conflict, communication, engagement? Do you have experience managing detail and accounting and numbers? You are going to find that out very quickly. And so start that research early. There's no time limit on when you can do that. Harkening back to what David had mentioned before, good employers know when you've put in the time. And so I just wanted to surface, because he said that and my ears went off. I remember when those numbers came out and I thought, they're looking for first years now. Okay, great. Like we had to shift because employers want to get in front of, they know how important branding is. We can thank social media for that. And that certainly heightened during the pandemic, that they want to get in front of students as early as possible and leverage your handshake tools to do that. We spoke about peer messaging. I'll talk about that later when you can, but you can reach out to people who used to already engage with Toppel and your university and say, hey, what was this experience like for you?
Absolutely. And Tiffany, build on that for us, if you would, about students gaining information about career opportunities, including internships, hiring events, employers. I know that due to Christian's leadership, the Toppel Career Center, University of Miami was one of the early adopters of Handshake. This was about, say, 5 years ago. We're about to hit our 5-year anniversary. And,
Yep.
and the first thing that we started to hear immediately from our students is, wow. And so I think we've been able to engage more students on the platform. So talk to us a little bit about that.
Absolutely. Well, we're just 6 years old, so Toppel has been with us for a very long time, so we're grateful for that. A part of it is, as much as I love Handshake, I remind you all as parents that we are only the tool. I think Christian referenced this before, that it is only as good as your student now engaging and utilizing this tool. And so, but the Career Center and leveraging all the services that they push through Handshake is going to be the cherry on the cake. Is your student utilizing the mock interview setups? Are they utilizing the resume review? And I know I keep circling back, but what David said is so true. I can tell you every intern we've ever had at Handshake, and I would bet my entire bank account I knew everyone that went to their career center and had their resume reviewed. It's just true. That's also the magic of the Toppel Career Center, right? But are they leveraging the resources? These are absolute separators. Are your students going to be incredible academically? By God, I hope so. But when that comes to that differentiation of an employer looking at great academic skills neck for neck, the separators are going to be how those show up in, are they confident in this interaction? Do they have a really tailored resume? Or do I get the sense that they sent this resume, click send to everyone? Those are the things that your career center is going to help your student work with immediately one-on-one. In terms of things in Handshake, I said follow employers, set up notifications. I know there's so much going off on your student's phone, but that's how you're going to know everything that the Toppel Career Center is pushing out for you, a last minute webinar, info sessions that employers are hosting. Are they doing drop-in hours as you prepare for your next interview? Those could open the door for you to access employers that you didn't know about, that didn't know you, that you're interested in. And those are absolute resources that Handshake tries to give you, like the platform to have that interaction with both employers and your career center.
Christian, would you like to add to that and or talk about other services, resources that we provide at Toppel for students?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that, Tiffany makes a great point that, there is no silver bullet, right? If there was a silver bullet, we wouldn't be having this session. You would know it. You would have your
jobs.
And they would have a job, and that's it. But, nothing in life is really that easy. You have to do it. So one of Tiffany's colleagues, actually, Christine Cruz-Vergara, who's a good friend of mine, she also works for Handshake. She said something to me one time, it was about a year ago, that blew my mind. And she asked a question, what's the best way that someone can find a job? And, everybody was kind of throwing out questions. And she said, well, you have to apply. And it blew my mind because it's so basic, but it's absolutely true. So often students will say, and not even students, let's say also friends of mine, family members who are looking for jobs. These are adults who have been doing this for many years. I'm looking for a job, but I've been looking for a job, but I can't find anything. I haven't heard anything. And my first question is, well, how many jobs did you apply for this week? And it never fails. It's always, well, 1, 3. Well, applying to 3 jobs is not a job search. You have to apply. And what I find so ironic is that it is so easy to apply now than it was when I was a college student back in the day. And I'm sure for a lot of you who are watching this, where you had to actually print out your resume, get that nice resume paper, type out the, the mailing label, do it nice, crease the paper, send it in and wait, right? Now it's all at your fingertips, but there's something that holds people back from hitting that send button, which always surprises me. So anyway, there's not one thing that's going to kind of solve your problem. So there are a lot of different things that we do and that we offer at the Career Center to help. And we like to think of it with using 3 words: explore, prepare, and connect. The exploration part, to me, is the fun part, but it could be very overwhelming for students because, you know, if you ask the typical adult, hey, list off a bunch of professions, you'd be surprised if people can get up to 10 even. Because we're ingrained, well, firefighter, police officer, nurse, doctor, lawyer, sportscaster, but those are just the tip of the iceberg. And even within those particular careers that I mentioned, they branch out into so many. And the ones that I could mention today probably may not exist 5 years from now, or they may just kind of spawn more, you know, different careers. So part of it is really exploring what's out there, being flexible, not letting it overwhelm you, realizing that your son or daughter will have multiple careers or multiple jobs, probably more careers than certainly I ever will. So the exploration is about helping you explore what's out there. And we do that in a variety of ways, through assessment testing, as I mentioned, through, we have this one resource called What Can I Do With My Major, which kind of shows with this particular major, you could do all these different things that you probably had no idea. Accounting, we mentioned accounting earlier. Oftentimes students think, well, I'm gonna go work for a Big Four accounting. Well, guess what? Every single industry needs an accountant. And there's so many different things that you can do with accountants, not the typical, you know, kind of that stereotypical accountant, you know, kind of persona. So there are different things that we offer in terms of the exploration. The prepare is the nuts and bolts, the resume writing, the interview skill building, the personal statement formation or creation when it comes to getting into graduate professional school. It's also matching students with people in the field, which leads into the connect piece. We offer a lot of programs, events, whether it's career fairs, career meetups. We offer our Youth Shadow program where students can have a day in the life experience with an alum who is really successful, and students can connect with these alums through a variety of variables. So it could be through race, ethnicity, it could be gender, it could be LGBTQ, it could just be the geographic area. So students can kind of get that insight, as well as internships and cane to cane, which I'll mention a little bit later. So there are a lot of different ways. So if there's 3 words to remember: explore, prepare, connect.
And can I add one thing to that real quick? Actually, maybe 2 things real quick. One, I'll put in another shameless plug for the folks at Toppel, in particular for Ali Rodriguez and her employer relations team, in that they do a fantastic job of engaging employers to become part of those programs. So it's not just the Career Center that's teaching this career search guidance to students. It's basically oftentimes doing it hand in hand with employer partners that they bring in to talk about things like how to get your students ready for a job interview, or how to help them write a resume or create a LinkedIn profile. So I think that's, you know, again, part of the magic about having your kids attending UM is the quality of the programming that exists within the Career Center. The other thing I'm gonna kind of throw out there as well, since this is really aimed at parents, is that I think as parents, you have a really great opportunity now to be part of the solution. We know that there are gonna be problems in the job market coming up. One of the things I always hear about that I always get nervous about is when I hear parents have, you know, that urge they have to hire their kid at their own company as an intern. And I generally just don't think that that's normally a good idea. I think it creates a friends and family atmosphere within that department. It sometimes doesn't look good for the parent, for that matter. But instead of thinking about hiring your own kid, talk to the Career Center and create an opportunity for another UM student. Think about, again, being part of the solution.
That's right. Dave, you're so wise. And you mentioned us being great partners at Toppel. Well, Dave and Maximus are outstanding Toppel partners. Dave is our resident guru. He presents on many things, but he does our Career Expo prep session. Career Expo is our big career fair that we have each semester, and he is on tap to do that again for us. So your students will, I'm sure, be meeting Dave at some point if they choose to engage with us. And since you were mentioning, you know, Christian had touched on resumes, we talked a little bit about internships and jobs. Dave, why don't you start us off? Talk to us about what do employers actually care about when hiring students for their internship and job opening?
So in speaking to the parents that are listening to this call, I'm going to give you a homework assignment in that I want you to Google a phrase called NACE Career Readiness, N-A-C-E Career Readiness, because if you want to understand what your child is going to be learning over the course of the next 4 years as they go through career exploration, I can guarantee you that phrase will be part of the conversation. So the folks on this call are all members or involved with the National Association of Colleges and Employers, which is the leading nonprofit in the United States that really promotes the hiring of the college educated for either jobs or internships. So everybody on this call has done work on a committee, they've served in leadership at some point in their career. And if you look at what NACE did about, I'm going to say 7 or 8 years ago, Christian, if I've got it right, somewhere in that ballpark, NACE created a study called the Career Readiness Study, where they took a look at the skills that employers require of recent graduates and current students to become successful in internships and jobs. I believe they surveyed about 700 plus companies across the United States, many of them multinational companies. I think they were across 15 or 16 different industries. And they asked them, what are the top 8 or 10 skills that predict success in your industry? And I think when they did that, they were thinking that there was going to be this gigantic laundry list of different skills, both personal skills and technical skills, that would represent all these different industries and all these different types of companies. But to our surprise, we found that there were about 8 or 10 skills that there seemed to be fairly universal agreement on. So it didn't seem to matter if you're going to go into a career in finance versus consulting versus sales versus government versus education, that there seemed to be a lot of consensus on 8 or 10 skills, which became part of what we call the NACE career readiness competencies. So those competencies are actually undergoing some review this year. NACE is actually taking a look at updating them to see if there are different skills that need to be further emphasized. Are there new skills that maybe have been developed in the last 5 or 7 years that should be brought up? I could tell you, if you're trying to really find out what your kids need to be focusing on, start with those career readiness skills, because they are becoming universal language when it comes to the job and career search. And then also start thinking about updates that we think could be coming, or in particular, what we believe employers are going to be looking for in the future. Those career readiness competencies right now involve things like critical thinking, communication skills, the use of digital technology. There's a wide variety of those skills right now, but one of the areas that I suspect is going to get a lot of attention, given the extraordinary social change we've been seeing in the last couple of months, is a focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion. That as an employer, it's hard to imagine that there's going to be any decisions that we make going forward, whether it's recruiting or just general business strategy, that doesn't factor in the concepts of diversity, equity, and inclusion. So I do think that that, thankfully, is something that's going to get a lot more attention and something you can really start encouraging your children to get prepared for.
That's a great point, Dave. And I think when we look at, again, the overall student at the institution, could be anywhere, if they're a transfer between 2 to 4 years, you know, students hopefully are thinking about internships and jobs in undergraduate school. You know, for the purpose of our conversation, I'm curious, I want to start with Tiffany on this. If the process of securing that internship or good job after graduation has changed, and what should students be doing now that maybe perhaps their parents or older siblings were not considering?
Absolutely. A student today has way more ability to research and connect with a company than Christian, Ali, you, David, or myself had even 5 years ago, much less, I won't date any of us, when we were all job searching, right? And so you have to utilize all those tools. You know, use peer messaging and Handshake. I didn't know how to connect to someone else I didn't even know, right? You have to consider, if I didn't even know what I wanted to do, who was I going to reach out to? Where was that outreach going to happen? And so even just from a research standpoint, I'm going to sound like a scratch record today, but an informed candidate is a differentiator for our candidate pool. So the information that you have absolutely sets you up for success, even when writing that letter, during your interview, and in that relationship building. So access the research tools that you have just to find out about these companies. I will let the cat out of the bag. I did not know about Handshake before applying to Handshake, right? But the research tools available to me presented as I was looking at, well, I know I want to explore education and how I can leverage technology. You realize now that you're able to find out way more opportunity than you could before. Look up companies' websites, their profiles on Handshake. You heard me spoke about branding. They're working with Handshake to brand to you. So they're collecting that information. They want to access you and hope that you are accessing them. Reach out to recruiters proactively. Again, not something that most of us had at our disposal, or you as parents back in the day. That was really reserved for a very elite portion of folks who you normally had to pay for. Now, recruiters are actively trying to source students. And so wherever you can make those connections, maybe it's LinkedIn, Handshake, wherever that is, that as recruiters are showing up to the events that Toppel Career Center is accessing, is providing for you, ask for informational interviews. Could you be rejected from an informational interview? Absolutely. But much like Christian's example about you don't know unless you apply, be prepared for that no, but continue to ask, continue to tailor that ask, because you will get a yes eventually, right? I'd mentioned before, you may be able to explore remote more than any of us could back in the day. I don't think any job I had at a higher ed institution, could have been hired in a remote role. I can see those posted as of yesterday, now considering remote. And so when I say be flexible, as I did in the beginning, that is definitely something that our parents, us, or older siblings wouldn't have had access to back in the day. And certainly one that they were doing, but one that will never change over the course of time, is tailoring your resume. I had mentioned, do not do this kind of control, copy, and everyone gets it. That is one of the easiest ways for an employer to look you over. They want to know, as much as I said that they're branding to you, they want to know that you're looking for them. They want to feel like you want to be a part of them and their culture and their team. And that takes some tailoring, which your Toppel Career Center will help you do.
Absolutely. Tiffany, can you spend one more moment elaborating on peer messaging?
Yes, you know, it's my favorite tool.
And then if you can just add Q&A on there as well, and then we'll turn it over to Christian.
Absolutely. I'm so glad. I was like, maybe Ali will give me an opportunity. So here's the great thing about peer messaging in Handshake. All your students have access to it. They can actually find folks based on a myriad of filters, but these will for the most part be alums of the university. So definitely folks who already are connected to your student experience, a bit more relatable than maybe you or I, or even the incredible folks at the Toppel Center might be to your students. So there's already this ease of outreach. Handshake does provide templates of here might be a great way to start this conversation with this peer. So it's really trying to reduce the anxiety, time spent, and frustration in, oh, how do I reach out? And definitely an easy back and forth tool that your students will have access to. And you'll have to look to Ali for the number of alums that you all have in your system, but know that it's quite a bit. And so your student has access to communicate about what was the interview process like for you. Yeah, I can ask about that company that they're currently working at. Are they hiring? Are they looking for new hires? Just really open up a dialogue, maybe even in a way that your career center might not be aware, because these are folks working actually in those companies. Q&A, kind of the same thing, being able to ask really poignant, up-to-date questions. And I use up-to-date lightly because you're asking direct questions about culture, things that sometimes you take 4 weeks an interview process to find out. That talk about going back to, as you mentioned, Ali, a resource that we would not have had access to. Sometimes you're knee deep in the job and you're like, this is not what I was hoping for. And so Q&A allows an opportunity for you to ask very tailored questions and get actual responses to in a way that I never thought could have happened when it comes to the job search process at all. And all of that can happen in Handshake.
So I wanted to add to that. You know, one of the things that I always find interesting with a lot of students is that they're so shy. They're shy about, even the most gregarious ones, the most, extroverted ones are so shy and reticent to ask for help or to reach out to someone for information, for an informational interview, whatever the case may be. And Now, I don't think ever has been the time, but certainly now is not the time to be a wallflower when it comes to these things. So my advice to your students is to be unapologetic about their job search. And what I mean by that is that everybody in their life needs to know what their interests are, and they need to know how they can help the student. It's one thing to say, hey, I'm looking for jobs or I'm looking for internships. Take it several steps further and say, these are the industries I'm interested in. These are the kinds of experiences I want. Or maybe I just want information. So we have another platform called Cane to Cane that helps students locate other alumni who have walked their shoes to be able to kind of pick their brain. So rather than a cold call per se, you already have that thing in common, which is the University of Miami. So we want students to use that, and there's no time when the students are allowed to use that. They can use that now as they enter the university. And in terms of how you can help students and kind of expand their network, is the same thing goes for you. Everyone in your network should know what it is that your child is interested in doing, whether it's an internship, whether it's just gaining more information. You'd be surprised how well connected you are based on not just your own company or organization, but the people in your sphere, whether that is, where you go to your place of worship, whether it's, community organizations, whatever the case may be. Helping your son or daughter really connect and expand their network really goes a long way. And I want to reiterate Javon's point when he said, be part of the solution and offer, opportunities to other students, or even offer your perspective. Cane to Cane, that system that I mentioned, it's not just for alumni to provide advice and support to students. We also allow parents and other friends of the university to be part of that. So you can certainly help us in this endeavor, because no career center alone, no matter how great they are, can do this. It truly does take a village, and that includes folks like you.
Absolutely. Dave, any final thoughts on anything students should be doing now that perhaps parents or older siblings weren't for that job search?
I feel like we've covered it. I think the only thing I could add to that is just understanding that one of the tools that I think is also helpful besides a handshake is really focusing on a tool like LinkedIn, say, for example, which is really, when you look at overall talent acquisition, obviously Handshake has got the market cornered in many ways when it comes to early career, folks looking for internships and job searches, but LinkedIn is one of those tools that you'll be using 30, 40 years from now, right? With all due respect to Handshake, is that a career searcher is going to be using that for quite likely the entirety of their career, because it houses connections. But people oftentimes don't understand all the different nuances and capabilities that LinkedIn provides. So if you really want to learn more about how your kids should be going in the job search, make sure they get some expertise on LinkedIn. Not just for job postings, not just in terms of creating their brand, but how to get connected to people that they don't know currently. That's something that a lot of students, we were talking about that shyness. Christian was saying it might be difficult for somebody who's naturally shy to do this stuff, but that's the beauty of LinkedIn and Handshake, is that students now, like introverts in particular, can now go about a job search in a completely different way than they could 15 or 20 years ago. They were at a big disadvantage, I thought, years ago, and now I don't think so much.
Dave, that's exactly why we created that template in Handshake to prime. We found exactly that. Students weren't willing to start the message, which shocked me out of my mind. I'm like, you're messaging on all your other tools all the time. And so and absolutely, I agree with you in the market space for LinkedIn. I hope that utilizing the tool in Handshake makes messaging in another platform that much easier. Utilize that copy text. We crafted it with our professionals in mind, with partners like Toppel. Hey, this is low risk, high engagement, professional, and it's there ready for that exact purpose. But you're right. Now is the time to lean into that.
Absolutely. Well, we've come to the end of our time together. And as I knew, this was an outstanding panel with some great information. So I want to thank Tiffany Taylor, who is our outstanding Handshake rep, and we've had the pleasure of working with her. I want to thank Dave Ong, who is a Toppel Award winner for Recruiter of the Year, and Maximus, a great Toppel partner to us. And of course, Christian Garcia, who leads us every day and makes the Toppel Career Center a great place. We have a great team, and I know we're all looking forward to meeting your students virtually and in person during the fall semester. So thank you all for joining us today, and have a great one.
Go Canes. Thank you.
Canes.